Hi, everybody. Welcome to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan,
And I'm Pete.
and we've got a full day or a full episode for you today. Pete, what do we have?
Today we're talking about quite possibly one of the best sci fi shows I have seen in a long time, if ever, Foundation.
Foundation. Where are you watching it? Where can our listeners watch it?
Listeners, if you haven't seen it yet, strongly suggest you to get Apple TV Plus and watch it. That's how good the show is. I would get Apple TV Plus just for this show.
Strong recommendation. Now, Pete, usually you and I are not always fully synced on our shows. Sometimes I'm a season ahead, sometimes you're a few episodes ahead, or vice versa. For Foundation, there's only one episode out, and you and I have both watched the entire first season, correct?
That's right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
So everyone heard that you think this is one of the best sci-fi shows ever. What makes it so good in your opinion? What do you love about it?
Oh, man. What don't I love it? First of all, it's a visual masterpiece. Like they spared no expense on the visual effects, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The scenes where they're doing faster than light travel, first of all, very unique. It's not like your typical
Mm.
Star Trek
Mm.
or Star
Mm.
Wars or any other show where you kind of see the stars kind of become lines and they zoom away. So first, just from that first opening sequence in episode one, what else makes it good? I think what makes it great is that the storyline is, and it won't seem so initially, but the storyline is actually relatively simple. Even though it comes off as very complicated, I will say you have to watch at least the first full episode, if not the first two full episodes.
That's a very, very good point. And I want to jump in there because, even though you and I have very similar taste when it comes to shows, I have less patience than you do. And I feel like I'm apt to make some snap judgments. So actually, Foundation was recommended to me by my brother. And I watched maybe the first half of the first episode, and I thought it was nothing special. I thought it was quite boring, to be honest. And I stopped maybe 25 minutes in and said no thanks. And he came back to me and said, "Give it a chance. You'll thank me later." And he was absolutely right that I kind of had to power through probably the first three quarters of that first episode before I saw something that was very, very compelling. So that's a criticism of me, I think, for being a little bit impetuous and having a low tolerance for, a not an exciting intro. But I think it's also an indictment on the creators who started a very, very fascinating show in a way that I think doesn't live up to the potential. How did you find it? Similar?
So for me, no, I find it the other way around. So
Oh,
the first thing is that in this era of streaming, right? And we're talking about maybe not even streaming, but
yeah.
definitely in the last 5 years, I think what you've started to see is like this so-called golden age of television, right? And in this time, you get to see some of the best stories ever told, and maybe not just 5 years, maybe a little longer. We're talking like Mad Men, we're talking Breaking Bad. All these shows have been on TV, and what most of them have in common is that they're slow burns, right? I love slow burns. That you need to have a little bit of patience and trust
Hmm. You love the
the
slow burn.
writers and trust the directors and trust the actors to get you where you need. And I think so.
Mhm.
What's happened is that I think in the last 10 years or however long it's been, my mind has slowly been reconditioned to that. So, whereas I'm very quick to give judgments on movies, I'm I'm far more, let's say, forgiving when it comes to TV shows and series. That's the first thing, right? So my mental expectations are always like that. But actually, on this one, for me, I found that this episode, the first episode especially, gives you a really good, quick feel of world building in this universe, right? that they've created. You get to see how the ships travel through space faster than light. You get to see the space elevator of the capital planet. You get to see the technology on the capital planet. You get to see the reverence of the, or maybe not the reverence, is the fear that the people have of the Empire.
Can we set it up a little bit for our listeners who maybe haven't seen the show, and just kind of like
good
outline
idea.
exactly what this universe looks like? Because unlike some of the Star Trek, the Star Wars, some of these other sci-fi universes, this one is actually somewhat grounded to a Earth reality. Would you say that's right?
An Earth origin, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, an Earth origin. So obviously, like with any sci-fi, I mean, this is based dramatically in the future, but it does make some allusion to the fact that all of the different beings, which are all humans in some form. They're not like aliens like you see in a lot of different sci-fi shows. They're all humans in form. Originated from a planet that was not specifically identified, but they've identified Earth specifically as one of the possible places of the origin of all humanity. So I thought that was an interesting little throwback where they acknowledge that all humans kind of came from the same place, but they're saying that was so long in the past that it's not entirely clear which planet they came from. So I thought that was an interesting little wrinkle. And then I think the other thing we should acknowledge, Pete, is that this is set up that, would you say it's a galaxy or a universe? Like, what's the term to encompass where all this takes place?
They use the term their solar system, or their, not solar system, but their galaxy. Right?
Okay.
So they've got multiple stars in that galaxy that they've explored, right?
So there's a galaxy. Yeah. So there's a galaxy of humanity, right? And it's governed by what they refer to as one empire. And I think that's
one empire.
That and the details to me get really compelling.
That's right. That's exactly right. So we don't know the full details of how this empire has come into power, but this empire is basically run by one man. And what you quickly learn is that this one man has been running the empire for 400 centuries. Or no, 4 centuries.
Yeah,
sorry.
400 years.
Yeah, 400 years. That's right, 400 years. But it's been the same man. But what they don't explain, or at least what I didn't catch until maybe episode 3 or 4, was that how this one man has lived for so long is that he's been cloning himself. And so the empire is run by 3 people: Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Dusk. And they're all the same. They're clones of the first original man. His name was Cleon. And Brother Dawn is the youngest, and he's there to learn from Brother Day. Brother Day is the emperor in charge, and Brother Dusk is the emperor that's going to die. He was the emperor of the last generation, and he's like the elder statesman who gives advice. Think of him as like think of this as like a one-man board of directors, right? And so you have your intern, you have your CEO, and then you have your advisory, all run by the same character, right? Or by the same character, just in different stages of their life.
I thought when that wrinkle came to me, or not that wrinkle, that
revelation,
that part of the story, that revelation part of the story, that's when I really got hooked into that, because I thought that was so creative and so clever and actually so practical. If you were going to rule a galaxy forever, that seemed like a very intelligent way to do things. And it also acknowledges, I mean, these are still human beings. It's strange they have not, developed, a way to like stop aging or slow aging or live indefinitely. They still acknowledge, they're aging human beings, which is also pretty realistic when you think about it in 400 years.
And it avoids all the pitfalls of those, the not aging. Oh, you don't get to experience life, blah, blah, blah. These guys are all experiencing life to their fullest. Just they're doing it again and again and again.
Absolutely right. And Pete, one of the things from a real practical perspective, because you and I love the production elements of these shows. Season 2, season 3, season 4, and beyond, the characters don't have to age. They've built into the storyline
That's
the
right.
opportunity for them to kind of continue to recycle themselves without. We've seen how many shows where people get different haircuts, different makeup, they grow a mustache, they put on the fat suit or something, right?
Yeah.
To kind of to demonstrate that they are aging. Or you see something where, over the course of 7 years, they just kind of like age naturally, but it doesn't kind of match up to the sequence, within the show itself. So I
Yeah.
thought this was a very, very elegant solution to a real problem, whenever you have, multi-series programs. So I was
Yeah.
hooked absolutely after that. But now we get into the main issue, which is the foundation, right?
Oh, right, right. So the overall premise of this story is that there's been a math competition. A woman from a young girl, actually, from a planet that is like filled with religious zealots who have, spurned the ways of science and technology, solves this math problem, wins this competition, and is invited to the capital planet to work with the most famous and most prominent mathematician known to mankind. She goes there only to find out that the whole competition was a setup, and that the mathematician is going to be found guilty of committing heresy.
And math is, this is referred to, we call it math because we're not mathematicians, but I mean, this is like a discipline of mathematics called, like, they call it psychohistory, correct?
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
that's a good point. So it's
Yeah.
not like 1 + 1 is 2. No,
Yeah.
this guy has created a formula in this special math field that can predict the future.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he's committed of or he's found guilty of treason because his math proves that the empire is coming to an end.
So essentially, this is Jared Harris, right?
That's
Our
right.
good friend Jared Harris, we love from Mad Men. What else have you seen
Sherlock
him in?
Holmes,
Sherlock Holmes,
uh,
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. That's right.
Yeah. So he essentially says, through his very complex algorithm based on this discipline of something called psychohistory, that he's identified that the empire, which has remained intact and peaceful throughout the galaxy for over 400 years, is going to come to an end at a near but undetermined time. And his position is that this cannot be stopped or avoided, but the disruption can be minimized, if they take a few dramatic steps. And of course,
Right. So from
yeah,
30,000 years, he's convinced that he can bring down the anarchy that will ensue from 30,000 years down to 1,000 years.
I have to say, Pete, how do you feel about this if you're the Empire? What would your reaction be if someone was, saying such a thing to you, though? Right? I mean, these.
I mean, look, all things being equal, I'd probably have the same reaction. Right? You've been I've been emperor for 400 years. My cloned
Yeah.
brothers have led this world and will continue to lead these, not this world but this galaxy for however many years, right? Like at this point I would have a pretty gigantic ego, right? And I'd probably, if anyone threatened that or even threatened to threaten that, I would be more than happy
Yeah.
to get rid of them, which is effectively what happens, right? So
Yeah.
the emperor says, "Okay, fine."
Yes.
He finally is convinced
Yes.
that this could happen, and he sends Jared Harris and this young woman and all of the people who followed this path.
Like, basically his followers, right? I mean, it's kind of a movement of, like, doomsayers. Yeah.
And say, "Okay, we're going to set up what's called the foundation on the outer skirts of our galaxy, and that foundation, very, very, very loosely defined what it is, but it's effectively
Yeah.
the human equivalent of the seed vault in Norway, which is to say that when everything falls to crap, you can come to we will teach you again math, language, how to harness the powers of the sun, how to travel in space, that sort of thing. That foundation is basically a repository of all knowledge that has been accrued over the last 15,000 years.
Well said. I have to say that's a very, very concise summary. And I like the analogy to the Norway seed vault, which may or may not exist and may have limited use in the case of an apocalypse. But it's good to know that we've got all the varieties of corn and
Exactly.
beets.
We'll always have
tucked
veggies.
Safely away, and we'll always have veggies. Thank God we've got some carrots.
The basic premise is that this group of mathematicians and followers are sent out to the edges of the known galaxy to set up this repository of all knowledge. And that's basically it. Without us knowing more about this world, that's all effectively happens within the first 2 or 3 episodes.
What do you think of the cast?
I think, again, as we've said in previous episodes,
there's a few very prominent people, right? So Lee Pace, who plays Brother Day, the functional CEO,
sure,
Empire, has a lead role. Jared Harris, who plays the psychohistory mathematician who calls for this, breakdown of the Empire and the galaxy, has a very, prominent role.
I don't know anyone else in it.
Apart from that, to be honest, I do not know anyone else, although they're extremely talented and accomplished. I don't recognize anyone else in the show. And there's a lot of, I feel kind of, at least in this first season, that apart from those two, and who is the young girl who wins the competition?
Lou Lobel. Yobel. I don't know how to pronounce that surname.
What is her name? What is her name in the
Gail Dornick.
Yes, Gail. Yeah, Gail, Gaal.
That's right.
Yeah. So Gail Dornick obviously is a very very prominent role as well. But apart from that, they do a very good job, I think, of rotating a lot. And it's hard to find anyone else who gets a whole lot of screen time or prominence, kind of apart from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is one of the nice parts of this.
Let's get into the later part of the series. Actually, who also gets a shout out is her daughter, right? Not shout out, but screen time.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And we don't know that she's her daughter until
Salvor
until the end of the series. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. We got to it earlier than usual.
Earlier than usual. So that's growth for us. We're getting better. The twists in this show come at you hard and fast. Yeah. But they're not twists for the sake of twists. They're really good ones.
Yeah, but can we say something that's done very well here? Which is, like with a lot of sci-fi shows, they also manipulate time. That sometimes you see multiple different storylines taking place, and you believe that they're taking place simultaneously, right? But in fact, they're not taking place simultaneously. They're taking place, either in the future or in the past, and then at some point they converge. But it's like you're watching multiple different timelines. And you think they're all happening, contemporaneously, but just in different locations. And then when they all kind of like merge together, you see that they were not happening in the same reality, but they were happening at different times.
Yeah, but what's very good is that when it's happening, you very quickly attune to that. Right? There are some shows.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It doesn't hide the ball. It doesn't hide the ball and try to make it complicated. It's just like a snap aha moment.
I don't know if you watch the Witcher series on Netflix.
A little bit.
So the problem with that show, lovely show, great. I love Henry Cavill. I thought he was very good in it. The problem with that show was that it jumped around times so quickly and so often, but it never alluded to that in any way, shape, or form. And it wasn't until halfway through the series that you understood that. Here, you see a lot of that, and unless they're traveling faster than light, it's understood, and they explicitly state that any space travel is going to take decades, right? So there's the when they get banished, it's going to take them how long? 38 years, 40
Mhm.
years, something I can't remember. Some ridiculous number of years to get from the capital ship to the final thing, because one of their
Yeah.
punishments is that they are
Yeah.
not granted, yeah, that they're not granted a faster
Yeah.
than light ship. Then at the end, when Gail's daughter travels back
Mhm.
to her home planet to find her mother, they say it's going to take 100 something years for that to happen, and it does take
Mhm.
100 years. And so when you catch up with that last scene, you realize you're 100 years in the future, and that
Yeah.
everyone she's known and loved is long dead by now, right? But they're very good about that. They don't hide the fact that there is time jumping, and they're very practical about why and how there's time jumping.
I agree with all that. I mean, I think that's again. I think that's one of the things that we really like about the series is that it's not so linear. And I think it comes probably in one of the first episodes that we realize that not everything is linear. You don't have all the pieces to kind of put together, but you understand that this is obviously there's something. You don't know what that something is yet, but it's apparent that obviously these things are kind of taking place in different intervals. Otherwise, it wouldn't match up. But you're not sure exactly how those
Right.
pieces are going to fall into place yet.
And then, so let's go back to the plot. So we know that these guys have been sent off into the outer regions, right? And one of the things that happens on the capital planet is a terrorist incident. And no one knows who has actually done it, but clues are left that there are not races, there are two civilizations that were behind it. And both of those civilizations have typically warred with each other, right? And I can't remember the names of them, but you'll watch the show and see.
Can I ask you? This is a good point of clarification because let's just the main planet, the capital planet, is called Trentor,
Yeah.
and then they have something which is called like the Sky Bridge, which just basically
Mm-hmm.
looks like a
A space
a
elevator.
space elevator, which apparently there's something on kind of like every level. But it is, how long do they say that it takes to travel this thing? It takes hours, right? Do they say like it's
18 hours to
18
go up and
hours to
down.
go up and down?
Something like that, yeah.
So it kind of appears, I mean, the way that it's projected to me is it kind of seems like this is something that's like next to the moon, like a space station. You dock in it, and then you take this elevator all the way straight down from the moon to Earth, for example.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a nice spaceport. Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand exactly that concept. Like, I mean, this is kind of like the big feature of the entire galaxy. But do you understand like kind of the purpose of this? Is there really a purpose, or do you think this is just something that's made for for the entertainment value, and it doesn't really make sense kind of in the reality? Because when I heard that it was taking 18 hours, I was thinking, look, they can fly from one side of the galaxy to another. This is only going basically from the moon to Earth. What exactly is the point of having this big space elevator?
Yeah, so I think they don't explicitly mention it, but I'd like to think that the implication was made. There were two implications that was made, right? One, it's on a practical basis an easier way to conduct space immigration,
It's like a terminal.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what we see everyone go through
Yeah.
when the episode opens.
Mm.
Is you see this you see Gail go through immigration,
Yeah.
right, and customs. So it's it's a great security check,
Mm-hmm.
right, and B, if I remember correctly, in one of the episodes they talk about how it was also like a vanity project for the Empire to show them that we are so powerful. Everyone can land a spaceship on the planet. That's not a big deal. We've got a dedicated spaceport for it, and we built this test giant elevator, which is basically a testament to the fact that we are living gods, right? Because remember when they were the brothers were infighting amongst each other, the Empire, Brother Day and Brother Dusk, they were like they used that as fodder against them. Like, well, you let our thing get destroyed on your watch.
What do you think of the I mean, that's a very good explanation, and now that clarifies it.
Yeah.
What do you think of the interaction between three brothers? Because we call them brothers, right? And they call themselves brothers, but I mean, they are the same version, right? I mean, there's me, there's an older me, and a younger me. Even though they have a lot of mutual respect for each other, and generally except for a few instances, treat each other, well. They don't actually seem like they're kind of best friends, as you would imagine, like I would be with my older and younger self, right? They seem a little bit independent
And
in terms of
combative
how
at
they're,
times.
yeah, and combative at times. Is that just natural that I would have an older version of me who would be telling me what I should do because they're more experienced? And is it natural that I would, both, mentor and torment the younger me, even though I know that I'm doing it to myself and it was done
Yeah,
to
I
me?
think it's because they're genuinely more like
It's hard to
siblings,
get your
right?
head
I think
around,
they're
right?
genuinely more like
Yeah,
siblings.
it's hard.
Which is to say, you have a
Yeah, it's hard
brother,
to get
I
your head
have an
around.
older sibling. We've all been through
Mm-hmm.
that, right? We understand
Mm-hmm.
that it's
Yeah,
natural for infighting and swiping and sniping at each other. And where it becomes
yeah.
interesting, and where, upon further reflection, one of the final twists in the show, or surprises in the show, maybe not twists, but one of the surprises
Mm-hmm.
in the show that doesn't seem as surprising is that if you break the dynamic of the brothers between the first half of the season and the second half of the season, where they're playing each other, that they're the same character. So Brother Day is the same character in episodes 1 through 5, but he becomes Brother Dusk in episodes 5 through 10 or 6 through 10,
Yeah,
for example, whatever the numbers are, right? Where
yeah.
it becomes interesting
He's like 8, 10,
is
right?
the yeah
Yeah.
where it becomes interesting is the
Mm-hmm.
change from Brother Dawn to Brother
Oh, never
Dusk in the
surprised.
first
Yeah.
half to the second half, right? Because when Brother Dawn is introduced to you in the first few episodes, he's a young boy, right? He's like an adolescent. He's not even a teenager yet. He's like a young boy, and he's like 8. He seems fearful. He seems, like scared of
Yeah.
things. He doesn't understand what's going on and why these things are happening. But then you see him when he's older as Brother Day, and he's really like he's a tough man, right? Like he is experienced,
Yeah.
he's well versed, he's a badass, he's ready to execute people. He
Yeah.
does the things that he was taught and he understands is right
Yeah.
for the empire and his family. And by his family, I mean himself,
He's a badass
right?
CEO. Yeah.
But you see that shift in the second half
Yeah.
between Brother Dawn and Brother Day, and Brother Dawn and Brother Dusk.
Yeah.
Comparatively, if you compare the two, and then you know
Mm-hmm.
why, and that the reason why is because he's genetically not the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big reveal, which is, we don't know it. At first it was because they're not genetically identical. And getting away from that, I mean, you
Yeah.
see for the first time one of the brothers, feeling a little bit stifled. And rather than feeling entitled, to their position, they feel a little bit like they don't fit in and worried about acceptance. And it's a general lack of confidence. And we know part of it is now perceived that, that Brother Day,
Yeah.
realizes that he has some very minor differences, from his other selves, whether it's, his double jointed thumbs, whether it's that he's left-handed versus right-handed and he's colorblind, for example. Like these things cause him to feel, that he would be at risk, like they would actually dispose of him and replace him with a different Brother Day if they were discovered. This is kind of the first time that we see any cracks, I think, within the empire, and it's kind of interesting to see him at this position, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is an interesting dynamic, or the interesting change in dynamic, right? Is
Yeah.
you get a good explanation for that, and it's unfortunate. No, I want to say it's slightly unfortunate
Yeah.
that that's the explanation, because I liked that change, right? And I wanted to see how they would deal with it, and this is why I think season 2 is going to be even more
Yeah.
interesting. So at the end of season 1, you learn that a terrorist group has infiltrated the Cleon family vault, where the body of Cleon, the first original Cleon, is stored, and where they capture
Mhm.
or they get the DNA to make the clones of him, right? And you find out that this terrorist group has not just infiltrated it, but has slowly been modifying the DNA.
Do you find this plausible? I find this a little bit curious for a few reasons. I mean, the first is that like if you have access to this, I'm not sure why they didn't like alter it in a way. I mean, okay, let's do a disclaimer. You and I know nothing about genetic modifications, right?
Sure.
I think we agree on that. So
I read the Wikipedia, but that's about it.
so I'm not sure this is even possible, but to the extent that you're going to identify that some unknown group that is anti-empire has gained access to, this DNA material, do you really think that they've modified it intentionally just to kind of create some color blindness or otherwise? Why wouldn't they make the person, like physically disabled or, some type of other, like mental handicap? I mean, they're not capable of doing this, or it's not really clear why this was like the fruits of their espionage.
So I think that they're playing the long game, right? I think that the long game is more valuable because what if there's another source of DNA that can be relied on to make other copies? If you make a change that's so openly dramatic that anyone can see what's happening, right? They would have immediately culled that Brother Dawn and made another one, right? And as far as we knew at that time, Brother Dusk and Brother Day were still perfect copies too, right? So they could have just made a copy of them. So by making it a slow and gradual shift, that's when you start, I think, really doing significant damage in the long run.
Is this intended to be psychological damage to the Empire, or this is intended to question the validity of the Empire? Where's the slow game in this?
I don't know about the validity of the Empire, but I think it's about eroding
like public trust?
eroding the system from within, right? Not even public, but internally. Because remember, Brother Dawn, he was the one who was starting to have questions about why things needed to be the way they were.
Well, it's an interesting take, but I have to say, like, generally, I mean, anyone who is looking for this type of regime change or eroding confidence in the regime usually isn't so disciplined as to create these very subtle, adjustments. They usually want, dramatic, immediate change. So I'm not sure that I buy this.
Yeah, I look at it this way. I think that in combination with what Jared Harris is doing, I think that's what, because they're all in league, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take it at face value. I'm going to take it at face value that there was some type of espionage. This is the result. I'm going to just kind of like ignore whether they were very poor genetic modifiers and this is the best they could do, whether there is a more sinister, whether this is just a one-off copy. But obviously something has taken place intentionally to prevent the Empire from, replicating itself in a perfect copy. And as you mentioned, it does create a lot of internal problems. How those are resolved, neither one of us know yet because we haven't seen season 2, but obviously it does create something that's interesting to keep an eye on. But,
yeah. Sorry, and to clarify something, what we learn in the show is that Jared Harris wasn't necessarily lying about the downfall of the Empire, but he wasn't being honest about the whole situation either, because it turns out that he was basically leading a revolt. And you find out that he's the head of this organization that he's created. He's kind of tailor-made to be the revolt against the Empire.
So let's break this down into two ways. The first is there's kind of two different parts of this show, right? There is what's happening on Trentor with the Empire, which I find to be extremely.
Oh man, I couldn't stop. Like I kept looking forward to that more than what was going on in space.
I agree. And then in, let's call it space, there is the Foundation, right? Led by Harry, right? The Jared Harris character, and Gale.
Mm-hmm.
And those folks who are kind of leading the Foundation. This I'm a little bit on the fence about. There's some very good action scenes. There's some very good events, to be honest, that take place that I found like pretty good. But just in terms of like the overall mission of Harry, I'm still not really like clear on what he like kind of intentionally manipulated, what is an unintended consequence, like how much he actually planned for this and how much is just kind of like the outcome. What's your sense on it? This is all like predetermined, or do you think this is unintentional in some ways?
So the way they've plotted it out is that Harry is this, or the way they've implied certain things. He's like a master manipulator, right? And that he's playing chess. He's playing 3D and 4D chess, and he's like 1,000 moves ahead of his next opponent, right? So the way, let's put it this way. I think what they're trying to say is that he has manipulated the creation of the
Mm-hmm.
foundation by the empire, right? So that he can get his people and their beliefs
Yeah.
combined with the two warring factions who were supposedly behind the terrorist attack on Trentor to unite and work together to create a new alliance, right? Because ultimately that's what we find out is that
Yeah.
the two civilizations
Yeah.
that were blamed for the terrorist attack hate each other and have always hated each other, right? For unclear reasons, which gets explained away within 15 minutes by Harry, which I wasn't a big fan of, but fine, I take it
For
for
unclear reasons. Yeah. Or misunderstood reasons. Yeah.
yeah, stop there.
If
Yeah.
only, yeah, if only all warring countries could so easily resolve their differences, which with a simple logical
So he has a
explanation. Yeah.
15-minute conversation with the heads of both of these civilizations
Mm-hmm.
on the Foundation's planet.
Mm-hmm.
They and convinces them that they shouldn't be at war with each other because the premise based on which they were at war is a fake premise. So they are all working together now, or at least that's what's implied. Is that in the last episode, the two warring civilizations and the Foundation and the Empire's, let's say, outcasts, have now created a new alliance, or at least an uneasy alliance, to fight the Empire, which is what I expect season 2 will be.
Are there going to be three storylines now in season two? And those would be the Empire and Trentor, and them trying to kind of come to grips with
Sabotage.
this
Yeah.
mini insurrection, and the three kind of getting along. There's going to be Harry and the Foundation. Is Harry
So he
dead or alive?
is dead
He's dead.
organically, but his intellect and his personality and his brain has basically been uploaded into this inorganic construct, similar to Vision in the Marvel universe.
Oh, I was gonna say Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I agree Vision is a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's stretch the word of
Right.
realistic, but yes.
Lowercase r. So okay, so Hari is still there, kind of as this holographic embodiment of his ideas, right? Still there to kind of guide the
Still there to
Foundation
lead, really.
and the Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the leading is what? What is he trying to do? I mean, is he trying to be is he trying to bring down the Empire and change it with like the Foundation? What is his end game, or is it?
That's what I think it is. That's what I think it is. Because it's
Yeah.
not you're right in the sense that they're not super clear on why he's doing what he's doing.
I mean it. Yeah.
But I suspect it's to bring
Yeah.
down the Empire.
So I mean, it'll be a little bit interesting to see. I feel like there's still got to be another twist into something. I don't know where this is, but I feel like initially Harry was sold to us as this dispassionate, objective mathematician who said, "I've
Yeah,
identified
that's
a
exactly
problem
right.
for the safety of all humanity. This is the solution. It's going to be difficult to accept, but I'm promising you this is the best outcome." Then we've kind of
Yeah, it's
yes,
the
it's
least
the
bad
least
outcome.
Then we've kind of seen that twist a little bit, and we're like, hey, this guy's very manipulative. Is he trying to do a power grab for himself? Is he trying to damage the Empire, because of some vindictiveness or score to settle or something else? But I feel like there has to be another big reveal in terms of who is Harry, because there seems to be something else yet that's kind of driving, what he sought to do, right?
Wait, say that again.
There seems to be some secret not yet revealed, or some event not yet revealed that's driving exactly what Harry is trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, yeah, and how he wants to
Yeah.
achieve it. He's been very coy, especially as that as that hologram.
He was a good guy, and now he seems like a bad guy. Is he? Who is? What do you think he
That's the thing,
thoughts?
is that
A
he
good guy or a bad
seemed
guy?
like, I don't even know if he felt like a good guy or a bad guy. I felt like he, like you rightfully said, he just seemed like a guy who identified a problem, right? He seemed like the true neutral.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or
Yeah.
not, this is going to happen. In my belief and
Yeah.
with my math, I can prove that my solution is the least bad way to get out of this situation. And that's all I'm
Yeah.
proposing to you. And
Yeah.
then, 8 episodes in, 7 episodes in, he turns to say,
Yeah.
guys, guess what? Tee
Yeah.
I was actually lying about that. Or maybe not being super genuine about that.
Yeah.
And then we're not fully sure what his new
Yeah.
motivations are. So I don't want to say he's a good guy. I don't want to say he's a bad guy. I do want to say,
Yeah.
all right, well,
No, but I want you to say that.
my gut says
I mean,
that the
yeah, tell me
Empire,
what your gut
the
says.
guys in the Empire, the Cleons were right, is that he was a revolutionary. And at the moment, because I like the Cleon storyline so much,
Yeah.
I'm siding with the Cleons.
I'm siding with the Cleons as well. I do like them. And that says something about you and I, but we'll get into that in a different episode. But I think at the end, he's going to be a good guy. But I think that we're going to go through a phase where we're going to see him do some very bad things, or learn that he did some very bad things. And we're going to have to, as an audience, kind of find a way to believe his justifications for why he's doing some bad things for a good cause, right? Which is the ultimate test of a lot of audiences, right? Which is, we always want it to be good or evil, and we have a lot of ambiguity when we find someone who we want to believe is a good guy doing bad things for a good purpose, right? And it causes us to kind of like, I guess, like adjust like our value system, right? Because we kind of use things like for the greater good, or you need to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, or whatever other kind of cliche applies.
Yeah.
The one thing is that Jared Harris, I mean, very well respected actor, doesn't really have this reputation as a good guy. If this were, for example, Will Smith, or think of someone else who's kind of like an A-lister. They've got a reputation, like The Rock. Let's say The Rock, for example, right? The Rock, well, forget Red Notice.
Let's not talk about Red Notice, please.
But generally is a good guy, right? And then I think you could see the character arc, which is, no way can The Rock be a bad guy. I'm sure that he's got a reason for doing all these bad things, and you kind of would be able to kind of like anticipate where this goes. Jared Harris, as any character, and even as an actor, doesn't necessarily have this ingrained reputation as, always a good guy, right? I mean, he was a good guy in Chernobyl, but I mean, apart from that, in Mad Men, he took his own life. So, I mean, it would not be inconceivable to actually find out that he's the antagonist, that he's behind the insurrection, that he's disrupted peace in the galaxy, for his own selfish, reasons.
Which would be a great twist in the other way. I think that because
we should be behind the Cleons.
Well, because in so many shows have we seen that, this ragtag group of outcasts become the saviors of the galaxy.
The rebels, right? It's always the rebels versus
in this case,
the Empire.
It's always
Empire. And
that's
in this
right.
case, we actually have an empire. Yeah.
Right. And in this case, it could genuinely be that the rebels are actually terrorists, right? Sure. Unwitting, for the most part, because even the guys in the Foundation, like there were times where people were like, no, we have to follow the plan set out by Harry, right? But they're just doing this on blind faith of Harry, not because they believe his math, because they believe his psychohistory. Why I don't think that's going to happen is because Harry's math is like a precursor to the powers that that Gale has. Remember? Because it gets outlined to, like, we see
Yeah.
flashes of times when she able to tell that something bad is about to happen before it happens. So like moments before the space elevator
Yeah.
explodes, she tells Harry something's happening, and then in the
Yeah.
space station, in the ship,
Yeah.
he lets the meteors crash into her, and before it happens,
Yeah.
she instinctively puts up a shield to protect her face
Yeah.
because she knows
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen and when. And you find out that he's
Yeah.
got, like, his math is potentially a precursor
Yeah.
to her powers, which is like this omnipresence, or like it's almost like this Minority Report esque
Yeah.
superpower where she can tell when.
Yeah. I think Gail and Salvor, her daughter now, I think for me it's very clear they are going to be the protagonist. They are going to be the moral compass of the show, and they are going to, be trying to effectuate the good outcome. What I'm not sure about is, does the good outcome mean that they're going to be battling against Harry? And it's kind of going to be, Harry versus the Empire, and Gale and Salvor versus, Harry and the Foundation. That could be an interesting storyline, because I feel like that the relationship between Gale and Harry is forever fractured. And it doesn't seem like both parties would be taking on the Empire. Gale doesn't really seem to have anything against the Empire in the first place, right? So
That's right.
so
And to be fair, the
Yeah.
Empire is all she's known her whole
Yeah.
life, right? So
right, but it doesn't seem like she has anything negative. So I wouldn't mind this showdown where it's kind of Harry versus the Empire trying to manipulate the galaxy against the Empire, and create all these like micro problems, and Gale somehow trying to find a way to, stop Harry. But now they're basically in different timelines, right? So Gale somehow has to.
no, they're not in the same. They're not in different,
I
because
don't know.
remember, Harry is now living forever because of he's in an artificial construct. We end the series with Gale's
Yeah.
daughter Salvor, biological daughter, not actual daughter, but biological daughter
But that,
Salvor, flying
Yeah.
back to her
Yeah.
to Gale's home planet. They meet each other after 100 years because Gale has been waiting. Sorry, Salvor has been waiting in cryostasis for 100 years because
where did Gale give birth? We've seen Gale, right? Okay, so she had
no,
a
she didn't
boyfriend.
give birth. Do you remember?
It's her daughter.
Yeah, but no. Do you remember in the ship they were storing and keeping each other's eggs and sperm on the way to the Foundation, so that they had a because they weren't exactly. So the idea was that they were going to save everything and store it safely so that they were ready and prepared to do that when they got to the Foundation.
Oh, they couldn't, right, because the environment wasn't
So
conducive to
the
childbirth
people
or
in the
something.
Foundation who were there 30 years later, whatever it is, they picked the egg and the sperms, whatever. So the
I see.
Salvor's mom
Yeah.
picked Gale's eggs and
Yeah. So Gail's been in cryostasis for some time. Her daughter
Yes.
was basically in vitro, right? Then she came and she traveled back to her mom's old planet, and that's where the timelines converge, and that's why.
That's where we end the series,
Yeah.
exactly.
Salvor
So basically
is
everyone
the
we
same
knew at the
age or
Foundation
older
is
than
dead.
Her own mom. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that's right. As far as
Mhm.
we are aware, they look like they're about
Mhm.
the same age, but she could be older. We
Yeah.
don't know what they're going to do with that. But they're effectively mother daughter, similar or same age, in the same time zone, in the same place now.
It's Interstellar all over again, right?
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey and what was his daughter's name there?
The redhead lady, I can't remember. She was in Molly's Game.
Yep.
Uh,
No. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
Jessica Chastain. Jessica Chastain.
Jessica Chastain. That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
But in the movie, she had like a boy's name. He's like, oh, Mitch. I can't remember what it was. But it was like a boy's name, right?
That's probably what
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
So that's the
Small
idea.
tangent.
Then
That's
it's
our,
all.
that's our tangent of the day. No
Yeah,
hot takes.
well-
Only a tangent.
Yeah.
So we're setting this up to see who is actually battling who. But I'm really hoping that Harry and the Foundation turn out to be the antagonists, the bad guys.
The actual bad guys. Yeah, the actual bad guys. It'll be, or Harry becomes, because he's now this artificial intelligent construct, right? And we've seen one AI in the show already, the Cleon's like helper. What I think would be hilariously interesting would be that it becomes Harry singular becomes the bad guy, and even the people of the Foundation have to work against him. But because he's this artificial construct, he becomes all powerful. He doesn't have the programming that limits the same robot that works for the Cleon, right? Because she was a true AI, but then gets limited down by her programming and is now forced to be basically there forever.
What do you think is the likelihood that this entire thing was manipulated by the Cleons themselves? Is there a storyline in the sense that the Cleons did this?
What, where they sabotage their own space elevator?
I mean, maybe. Maybe it's been done because they also know that, like the political tide is turning against having a singular empire. So they're trying to manufacture their own conflict, as a way to, galvanize people for them and literally turn Harry and the Foundation into kind of like the bad guys, or in a way, kind of shake things up, to continue to empower them to do what they want to do.
I mean, now you're talking about the plot of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Right? This is a bit of a...
I feel there has to be some twist with the Empire. I mean, right? It cannot just stay dawn, dusk, day, not in that order, right? It can't just stay those guys fighting the Foundation and trying to keep things together. There has to be at least one of them that have somehow, willingly or otherwise, kind of set these events in motion.
What would be interesting is if Cleon the First had programmed the robot to do that.
Yes.
And they uncover that.
Demerzel, right? Demerzel is a little bit creepy towards the end, right? Demerzel is Laura Byrne.
Yeah.
Who plays, the AI.
The caring robot.
Wet nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What is it called? Maid, wet nurse. Like nanny.
Nursemaid.
Nursemaid to the brother Dawn, although sometimes she seems to be the concierge for brother Day. Yeah?
Yeah.
And she seems to have, in some parts, she's really a robot, emotionless, focused on serving the Empire, to the extent that she actually does kill Brother Dawn, right? The defective Brother Dawn.
The defective brother, yeah.
Right? So, I mean, she has an unbending loyalty to the Empire, although we've seen some of her behavior where she seems to have, like, some of her own religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs. Yeah. And obviously she has this small meltdown where she rips her face off and screams, and there's certainly something about her which indicates that she's torn between kind of two different, programs that she has, right? One which is...
I think it's her true AI programming is being suppressed by like this programming by the Cleons. And I think that's what's at battle. And what I think could happen, or one possibility of is that battle, like she wins that battle, or the AI wins that battle, and she ends up siding with either with Harry or with the Foundation.
Yeah, certainly we haven't seen the end of this, and it doesn't seem like this is going away. It seems like it's going to be more pronounced, that she's going to be kind of, leading this small double life where she is, extremely dedicated to the Empire, but at the same time, she's got her own kind of belief system that seems to be at odds with what she's doing.
And she's clearly hating what she has to do.
What she didn't want to in a robot? Why are you getting all these cyborgs if they've got like all this drama? Isn't that a little bit frustrating to you?
It's not, but it is. But at the same time, this is one of those subplots that's actually interesting to me.
Yeah.
Right. So
Do you think this is Westworld?
So I only saw the first episode. Oh, sorry, first season of Westworld. So I can't comment on anything beyond season one.
Oh.
But remember, this is what we were talking about with For All Mankind. The problem with subplots is that they have to drive the
Yeah.
main plot forward, and they need to be interesting. And in this case, super interesting, right? Because we don't know. There's a secret there that we're still trying to uncover. We don't know what it is yet, right? And we know that whatever the resolution of that conflict is going to be is going to have a direct impact one way or another on the main plot.
Okay, so 2 questions about this. First, are these subplots too subtle? And the second question is, do we have enough characters in this show? We've gone through a lot of characters who have made, let's say, 1 episode or 2 episode cameos, right? Brother Dawn, right? Cassian Bilton. Okay, he's been killed by Demerzel.
Yeah.
Then we had Gail's boyfriend who died or was executed, right?
Yeah.
Then we had Salvor's boyfriend. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. Salvor's mom, Salvor's father.
We have enough characters, but they're going to change often because of the way time works in the show.
Same thing with Azura, right? The guy that Brother Dawn, tried to run away with.
Life,
right?
yeah.
Okay, now she's sentenced to some type of exodus. Yeah. So, I mean, we've gone through, to be honest, a lot of characters, 1 or 2 episodes. Farah's dead, right?
Yeah, she died in that
Who's
show.
gonna
She
be
died in
this
that
one
last
rebel
episode.
team. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of folks have played, Farah, for example, right? Played like a very prominent figure, for 2 or 3 episodes. I mean, she was extremely important to this, and then she was shot and killed. So, I mean, I feel like we're very limited now to the number of characters at the end. We've got, Dusk and Day. We've got Salvor. Gale is back. Hari obviously is going to appear holographically from time to time. And we've got Demerzel. Demerzel is a robot. I mean, she's not supposed to be a lead character unless something is going to dramatically change. Do we have enough people in this show? I mean, it seems like they've got to usher in an entirely new group in season 2.
So I think what's really good about this is that the main cast of characters that are going to stay, let's say, prevalent through the series, right? We're going to have what I expect now.
Yes.
Gale, Salvor, right? So mother-daughter.
Yes.
Harry, the pro/antagonist we don't know yet. Okay. You've got Brother Day and Brother Dawn. Brother Day and Brother Dusk, because Lee Pace plays both of them. Okay. And so let's put it this way. The brothers, right? There's always going to be 3 of them, right? So those, and the robot, those are going to be the, let's say, the mainstays of the show.
Is that enough?
No, I think, so what I really liked about this show is that the supporting cast, even though they're not there for a long time, whether it's only 7 episodes or 8 episodes, and we don't know how many seasons this thing's going to be, they play a very valuable and impactful role, right?
Yeah.
So like that Indian lady who played, what's her face? Farah, yeah?
Yeah.
Farah, only there for the 6 episodes or whatever number of episodes it was, strongly impactful role, but once her role, once the objective of her character was played out, she was killed off, right? As were other characters like her adoptive father, like Salvor's adoptive father.
Yep, Abbas.
Yeah. So all these people play their roles to achieve some plot contrivance or plot related goal, and then they introduce new characters, right?
This is following very much a Game of Thrones model then, right? Where you're going to always be introduced to, I don't know the name, the Klingons, right? Like you never heard of the Klingons before, and somehow the Klingons are going to be introduced. I know I'm combining all my sci-fi, but they will be introduced, and then they will have a leader, and then we're going to really get to know this leader, and then they'll be ushered in and ushered out, and then a new group will come in. It seems right now that they're kind of following this.
And to be fair, and to be very frank, I'm really only okay with that because of how strong the story elements are and the plot elements are for the Cleon family and for the Foundation. I am
Yeah.
super psyched to see what happens with Gale and Salvor, and whether they both have this
Mhm.
superpower of being able to pre-sense danger, right? And what that does for them. I'm
Yeah.
super intrigued to see what
Yeah.
happens with Jared Harris's character, with Harry. Like, I want to see whether he turns out to be the good guy or the bad guy. And I am 100% all in for the Cleon. I want them to be, the long lasting guys because their story is super elegant and super interesting to me, right? Even that quote unquote diversion.
And Demerzel. I'd be really disappointed if Demerzel is not part of a much wider, like plot, or maybe not plot,
Yeah.
but wider storyline where she continues to both, undermine and support
Yeah, and I
Empire.
imagine that she will be. I imagine that she
Yeah.
will be because I think one of the other things is that you've seen in this season is that all of the brothers have kind of become overly reliant on her for everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, like they don't want to do the dirty work themselves, and so they use her for that. So she's going to definitely be a part of it. Like, I thought the way they handled that diversion to the planet where the other politician was in danger of leading a new rebellion, right? I thought they handled that subplot. That was the subplot
Yeah.
of the Cleon story. I thought that was done really, really well. I thought Lee Pace was
Yeah.
super manipulative on that.
I thought it was very interesting. I agree, and I also like that. I really liked. I mean, we're talking about when he did kind of this trek or this journey, right, to the I call it a salt mine. That may not be what it is, but I mean, I thought that was a very humanistic way to portray him, right? And he's become a little bit of a sympathetic figure. I'm not sure if we're supposed to like him. I mean, he is Empire. He is ruthless. I mean, in a way, usually you would think that he would be the person that everyone is rooting against. But in some ways, I mean, he's become someone that, at least for me and you, we've identified that we actually kind of like him and support him and don't want him to be overthrown. We kind of want more of him. But I thought that this journey was a very, humanistic way for him to say, hey, like, I'll do this myself. Like, it might be physically grueling, but, I'm willing to do it myself and take all these risks. And I think if you found, for example, like when you look at Game of Thrones, like King Joffrey, for example, would never subject himself to this.
No, my God, no.
Right? I mean, you find a lot of the rulers are never willing to kind of get their hands dirty or do anything. They want everything kind of like given to them. And I thought that Brother Day going on that spiritual journey was like really quite interesting.
So I think that for me, when he went on that journey, I didn't see that ending coming up, but
True.
I totally felt that he was lying about the whole thing, right? Which he turns out he was.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they set it up a little bit obviously, right? Because he asked.
Because it was almost too
Yes.
effervescent about it. He
Yes.
was almost too
Yes.
glowing about it. It was like, oh, well, what do these saps want to
Yeah.
hear? I'm going to tell them exactly
Yeah.
it.
Because he asked
I'm going to
someone-
get their
he
approval.
asked someone. The one thing I kind of thought would happen that didn't is I thought that he would go down on maybe both knees, where he's supposed to kind of like concede in death. And he would kind of like cheat that and say, well, you know what? I'm not going to do it now. Like someone who's going to come into his side and say, okay, here's a little bit of water, so you can die peacefully. And he's going to get up and like choke that other person and say like, hey, like that rule doesn't apply to me. Like I'm not going to like just yield to death. I'm going to continue on, now that you helped me and, now I'm strong enough to continue on. I kind of thought that there would be something like that, which didn't materialize, but I agree. After he asked the person about like what that person saw and their experience, I agree that it was a little bit not obvious, but I mean it wasn't surprising that he, as you mentioned, he gave the people what they wanted to hear, and it was obviously something beneficial to him. But I certainly didn't hold that against him.
What that was great about that was that Demerzel's reaction for when he admits to her that he was lying about the whole thing.
I don't recall. What did she do? What was the reaction?
Because she had done the journey, which again, like, I don't understand how this artificial intelligence thing works, but like she had gone through the spiritual journey herself
Yeah.
in her past life, right? So she was like unhappy that he had lied about that. And then in the same sentence to say, and I want you to go take care of, or in the same conversation, to go take care of that political dissident,
Yeah.
essentially implying, I need you to go kill her, right?
Yeah.
And so, she's resigned to her fate, but she's not happy about
Yeah. A very high. Demerzel is a very high maintenance android or robot or whatever whatever the term is for her. I mean, it's interesting, and I agree. It's a very good plot twist because, to be honest, it would be a little bit boring if she was only doing as she was commanded. It's good for the storyline, but I can absolutely.
She's a bit like RoboCop, right? Like she's breaking her protocols.
Yeah.
She's pushing back against where she shouldn't, or where she, her programming won't let her.
I have to say,
so
for me, the parallel is Westworld, and I highly encourage you. This is a personal plea. Please see Westworld, because I have to say there's a lot of parallels there, and I think it gets into also some super interesting issues, which is like when you talk about AI, which is probably like an episode of its, or a conversation at least of itself. Like AI is kind of like learned behavior, right? So at some point, you do have your own personality and belief system, and it's unexpected.
Yeah.
What that kind of turns into, right? And Demerzel has kind of exhibited that.
No, I agree. I will watch it just because I saw the first season. It does have glimpses of it, or she shows glimpses of it, especially of Tandy Newton's character.
Yeah.
In the first season.
Yeah. I mean, is this worthy of a tangent?
Everything's worthy of a tangent.
Well said.
I'm all in favor of tangents all the time.
So I mean, I think we aren't going to get into a diatribe or a breakdown of Westworld. But I mean, I thought that Westworld was so fascinating to me for a lot of the reasons that Demerzel and Empire are interesting to me, which is these things you wouldn't say that they're realistic, but they're not entirely far-fetched when you're kind of looking at the evolution of technology and some of the potential unintended consequences of machine learning, right? So, I mean, for me, science fiction is fascinating, of course, but some of it is exactly that, right? It's just fabricated, what ifs or visions, right? And some of it is a little bit more extrapolated. Hey, if we continue down this path, this is a possible outcome, or this is, potentially how things could look, right? And I think those are the scenarios which are super fascinating to me as a sci-fi fan.
Right.
So put that on your watch list. And I know I've got a number of things on my watch list, and I think we should find a time to give those to our listeners as well.
I agree. So Foundation, final thoughts.
Absolutely worth watching. It's binge worthy. If you don't have Apple TV Plus, I totally agree with Pete. This by itself is a reason to get Apple TV Plus. We're both eagerly looking forward to season 2, and I think this is the way that it's going now. This seems to be a staple for several other seasons. I don't see that it's got really any limiting factors that it's going to stop after 2. This could be something that we're talking about, for seasons to come.
Yeah, so it's based on Isaac Asimov's Foundation books. There were 3. Hopefully it's not limited to 3 seasons, but we'll see how things go.
Have you read the books, by the way?
I have not. In general, I don't read any. They don't do anything for me.
Okay. I mean, is there anything else by Isaac Asimov that's been made into a film or a series that we should be focused on?
So there are movies that have been based off of his work, and let me just clarify this.
Yeah, that's
Electric Sheep Dream. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Oh, that was Philip K. Dick. I thought that was Asimov. Sorry, that's my bad. But I'm sure there are. He was such a prolific sci-fi writer. I'm sure there
are. Yeah. Maybe let's take that as a research point. Let's find out what else he's written about that maybe we want to take a look at. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. According to this, iRobot, Bicentennial Man.
Oh yeah. iRobot. Did you see iRobot?
I did see iRobot. His 3 laws were
well done.
his 3 laws were in it.
Yep.
So I saw that.
That's right.
But those are the only other ones.
Well, actually, those 3 laws make me think of the 4 laws that we saw in the Tom Hanks movie. What was this called?
Fitch?
No, we just saw the Tom Hanks movie with on Apple TV Plus.
Finch. No.
Finch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I misheard you. Yeah, Finch, right?
Yeah.
He said, never hurt a human, something else, and always take care of the dog.
Yeah.
Summarizing.
Something like that. So
Yeah.
I prefer RoboCop.
No, not RoboCop. Psycho. Oh, RoboCop had this.
No, but I also like RoboCop's
Murphy.
laws. He also had his directives, right?
Oh,
his
Murph.
directives.
There we go. That's Interstellar. Jessica Chastain was Murph. Because you heard the most Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, Murph. There you go.
Right.
There you go. Everything. Look.
Oh, Murph. Come on, Murph.
Yeah. Everything's a circle. Everything's
Where's
connected.
Matthew
I
McConaughey?
like
We
that.
need him to be in something. Yeah, we haven't seen him.
Isn't he running for... I think he's running for government office. I think he's running for governor of Texas.
I don't want him a governor of Texas. I want him to do another rom-com.
I want him to do other movies, yeah.
Yeah. Not his serious stuff where he loses weight and becomes, like...
Great movie. Dallas Buyers Club. Amazing film.
I did not see it. I started watching Mud a little bit, and to be honest, Mud was a little bit, it was bringing me down. So
Yeah,
Dallas
plus I heard
Buyers
Mud
Club,
wasn't that great.
I've heard that he's amazing in Dallas Buyers Club, but I really want to see him in his natural role in the,
Failure to launch.
Yeah, I want to see him in those movies where he's got the one-liners, he's got his swagger, and he's got his cocky grin. I mean, that's I think the McConaughey that we all kind of grew up with, and ever since Dazed and Confused, I really like that part of.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Speaking of all right, okay. So thanks everyone for listening in. I think that's what Pete said about buying Apple TV Plus only for Foundation is absolutely true. And we'll catch you next time when we'll talk about what will we be talking about next time.
Next time we are talking about Ghostbusters, and we're gonna give
the reboot.
No, the officially the official 3rd movie in the series.
Official 3rd movie.
And we're also going to talk about Spider-Man and give you guys a quick run through of what's been going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of Spider-Man. So that should be in time for its release coming up the end of this year.
So Spider-Man being released for the Christmas holiday, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right.
Should be out in the next couple weeks.
Spider-Man it is. Thanks everyone for listening in with us.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can always email us at filmsandstuffpodcast@gmail.com. Send us any comments, questions, concerns. We're always here.
This is Ethan.
I've been Pete.
Have a great day.
Thanks again.